Hello and welcome to the All Humans Are Human podcast, the Annie Altman Show podcast, season 5. Welcome to the 5th episode in the Creation C series. Today, I am so stoked I get to be here with Wendell Britt, who is a coach with 2 different programs. I'm going to link everything below, and you're going to get to hear all about it now and how it overlaps and all the different connections with creation. His programs are called Mastering the Game of Life and Mastering the Game of Allyship. Excuse me, Miss Tums, pardon the cat. On the prop up, Wendell is patient and a very comfortable with paradox human who has both an engineer sort of up and down, side to side brain, and also has a very creative, Star Wars loving, game loving, Dungeons and Dragon loving, maybe, kind of a brain. And I'm so excited that we get to record this podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Wendell.
Oh, it's such a blast. I was sold immediately on, oh my God, creativity and jamming with cool folk on the internet, figuring out this human thing. It's exciting. I'm equal parts, increasingly less sheepish, increasingly proud about how I've been attempting to solve this whole being a person thing. And games is it. It's why it's kind of made my whole deal. It kind of pardon my French, kind of a fuck you to my mom who's like, you're never gonna do anything with all those games, those hours of games on the TV. And I'm like, I will make several dollars, maybe not tons of them, but I will make a few. Helping people be more playful and gameful about their life. It's the only thing that we do that's hard, and we pay people to do it. It's like you will pay someone money to get your shit rocked by like Dark Souls or like even Wii Sports. It's just like we do hard stuff for fun when we play games, and then everyone's like living life and it's like life sucks. I was like, you want to make a game out of it? Then it's bad somehow. And I'm like, okay, well, if you ever get tired of that, like you can talk to me and we can like find ways to be creative and have fun with stuff that, again, in a lot of ways, we can't overcome. What they talk about, death and taxes, you can't avoid that. But I've seen people interface with the fact that they're going to die and the ways to acquire money and perform the game of capitalism in ways that I'm like, well, at the very least, the IRS must be having a fun time looking at their income. It seems interesting. And so like I want to be one of those people who's at my funeral. They were like, he was having a blast and the IRS is still chasing him.
There's a couple things there. There's more than a couple things. It was really interesting that you started with the language of solving this existence thing, like solution-oriented language, which is very game-oriented language to me. And I definitely relate to that part of my brain that is problem, solution. What is... And looking for, I feel like that's also related to the classic human search for meaning of like, why the fuck am I here? I didn't choose to be here. Now I am here. What am I supposed to do with this information or this, whatever this existence thing is? And also I really love the point about how different it is when you're going through a bunch of intense life challenges and feeling that like heavy and slogging along in life. And is this ever going to work out? Is this going to be okay? How am I going to do this? And that people pay in video games and so many other kinds of game situations for that exact same experience and emotional, even watching a movie or a TV show or reading a book could elicit that same sort of emotional response that in somewhere else someone is running away from, and somewhere else they're like, wait, this is a fun game.
Right? Well, I ran into this way back in 2016. I was living in Portland, Oregon. I was working at a tech company. I was working at Airbnb. I think I've been there for long enough that I can say I worked at Airbnb. It's fine. And was miserable, kind of like you do on the West Coast. Sorry, not sorry. It was very rainy. It was really rainy, and I was overpaid to do a job that wasn't like super fun. I have a passion for customer service, but it's all still people yelling at you professionally. And so my life like wasn't super great, but I was playing D&D every Sunday evening with the homies at work, and I was playing this character, Githra the Bard, and Githra had a rough life. Githra, I always tell people that Githra's story was like listening to like a country song, like his girlfriend turned into a fire elemental, the town that he was supposed to like protect gets destroyed. First his party members all die, then a second group of party members die, his hand gets chopped off, he gets like mind slayed by a necromancer, he's got to like leave the country and take on a new identity, then he's got to go fight Voldemort, who he might have accidentally like helped rise to power, and then after having defeated the great evil, on his way back home, dies of old age because he got possessed by a ghost and aged 37 years, like randomly. Like, rough life. And I've never had more fun playing a character ever. Before this character, I would always play like basically just like versions of me getting into like weird hijinks and like fantasy worlds. It was very escapist. And while Githler like had a lot of similarities to me, I would never really invite the type of misfortune that I put on this person. But like kind of seeing a character overcome those things, knowing that it was a game, knowing that there's like a story, knowing that there's kind of meaning behind it. Even at the end, I think he was given a choice. Oh yeah, he had to take a level in Warlock, and I never played Warlock, so I was like, ooh, that's kind of like spooky dukes. I don't like that. But I was forced to take a level in Warlock as part of like a devil's bargain for staying alive, because he was really good at staying alive. By the time that Githra dies, it was like, we've thrown everything we can at you. It was given a choice of like, you can keep your warlock powers, which I adapted to figuring out how to like be real clever with. Turns out, for all you D&D nerds out there, disguise self and the actor feat, if you put them together, you just disguise self at will, you can look like anybody. And if you take the actor feat, you can hear someone's voice for 30 seconds and completely reproduce them, and you get advantage on all rolls when you're pretending to be someone else. So you get to just, there'd be times where I was like, you guys are going to jail. No, I'm not. I'm the constable. And they're like, hey, how'd you get here, constable? These guys got to go to jail. And I'm like, great. He had all these really great powers that had come from this like rough and tumble style life, and eventually who's made to have a choice. Do you want to like keep your powers because you will have to kind of be like evil or whatnot, or do you want to go and be just like a true bard? And he chose the true bard, and so he lost his hand. He'd been using magic to like keep a hand going, and so he lost his hand, couldn't do disguise self, just like lost half of his powers. And I remember that choice feeling so meaningful, and it was like so dramatic, and I like felt like this arc was happening. He's like, this is who Githra is. We found it after. He's not the stuff that happened to him. He's all the choices that he made in response to the stuff. I was like, this is dope. And then I would sort of zoom out and was like, oh, I'm still in my shitty life. This character has a worse life, but it has more meaning. It's more fun. He's got powers and abilities that are like fun for me to play. And it really got me thinking, like, if playing this like fake character miserable is more fun than playing my like actual life, what does it actually mean to live a good life? Like, and that question is I've been still trying to answer ever since. But that's kind of where my programs came from, is that like, okay, as I started purposefully adding more gameful elements and thinking about like, okay, what does my character versus my player want to do in this moment? What's the story that I'm trying to tell versus like what experience am I trying to have? You know, when I can sync those parts together, great, but sometimes it's healthy to diverge them. It's just, you know what, I don't think I can jazz up, you know, say a friend's dad dying. That's character wise, that's always going to be a rough time, but how can I be playful with this in a way that like when I look back we'll have had a good experience? And that, yeah, that tension has sort of led me to kind of want to like share that with other people, because there's a lot more people with more skills and more like ability to contribute to like this whole crazy mix up of a world that we're in, but they're like weirdly taking their lives too seriously to like do the risky things. Like I tell people all the time, it's like, and this is more where engineer brain comes from, dice rolls fall across a normal distribution curve. You actually can't fail if you keep rolling the dice. Like over time, just probability will give you more better results than negative ones. But you've got to be willing to like accept the negative ones. And even the solve for how to deal with a negative roll is to roll more dice, just to keep moving forward. But everyone is like, I'll roll one dice this year, and that will constitute a good life. And I always ask them, like, do you like it? And what seems to happen every time you don't roll? Crazy shit that I have no control over happens to me when I don't roll. I'm like, yeah, I don't know why either, but it does seem like for whatever reason, like that's how it happens. Yes. For all you listeners at home, you cannot see this face that's happening.
head to YouTube to check out the facial expressions. All Humans Are Human podcast 2022. Okay, there's a lot of things in there again too. So I want to ask how you define a couple specific words, because I love definitions and I feel like you're a word definition nerd too. And I feel like that's kind of this next transition. And also, I'm stoked you brought up the normal distribution curve, because that is the graph connected to my One Human show that this podcast is connected to, the Humani 10 C's and the C bell curve, that it's a normal distribution. And I also love you bringing up you keep rolling, just keep playing, that the way to stop the game is to stop playing the game, or to not show up anymore to it. Yep. Okay, my questions are, I'm going to give you both of them. Do what you will. The first question, for myself and other people who are not super familiar with the exact rules and guidelines of D&D, is that how much of that character did you create? Like, I know there's like dice rolls that come into some of it. A lot of it also is like you get to choose, like my understanding of D&D characters is that a lot of that was you, Wendell the human, choosing that storyline and those things to play. And then the definition questions are, what does game mean? How would you define the word game? And how would you define the word play?
Perfect. Okay, actually, I know exactly the order I'm going to do this. I'm going to do game first. I 100% stole this from James P. Carson's Finite and Infinite Games. Highly recommend everyone read it. It's dope. His definition is, a game is overcoming an unnecessary obstacle. And that's his most specific. So
say it again slower, please.
Overcoming an unnecessary obstacle is a game. I've added a little bit of language. I add to the spirit of play. Like he was very almost like very game theory about it. Like there's games that people would maybe not identify as games, but because they're overcoming unnecessary obstacles, he still considers it to be a game. I say in the spirit of play. Because one of his rules too is, if you are forced to play, you can't play. So if I go up to someone and be like, we're playing Red Rover right now, and they're like, nah, I'm doing something probably very upsetting to them if I still make them play, and they're still not playing. Now the game is, how can I con someone into acting like they're playing Red Rover even though they're not, which is super miserable.
That's a really good like improv or sitcom scene of like forced Red Rover. You're like putting hands together and the people are like, what are you doing?
No, you're not doing
it. I'm gonna run.
You have to do it like with whimsy, and it's just like, I'm trying to go to the store. It's like, no. Okay, you hold this person's hand. I don't know. Yes, there's a whole, you're right. There's a whole thing there. So that spirit of play is where the definition gets a little bit murky. I've got my own beliefs around, I think play is the source of creativity. I think play is kind of an energetic, it's the wonder, the awe, the mystery, but also like creativity, spirituality, sexuality for me kind of get mixed up in play. There's something generative, infinitely generative around it. It's fun. Play is fun where games aren't necessarily fun. I think games provide a
pause. That's a really important distinction. I got to interject. That feels like a very important distinction that I just want to take a pause with. That the feeling of it being so relevant, and that you can play a game, and also you can have a game that is not play.
Yeah. Well, so I have a friend, Taylor. I think that's what my friend Tess talked about. The Tess and Taylor. They're listening to this. Shout out to y'all. They introduced me to
friends.
Type 1 and Type 2 fun. So Type 1 fun.
This is so nerdy. I love it already.
You're having fun like in the moment, like this conversation. This is fun. This is Type 1 fun. We're having fun. It's great. Type 2 fun is you experience the fun feeling on the other side of doing whatever it is. My friend Taylor is a mountain climber. I'm like, that is nonsense as far as I'm concerned. As someone who's very almost addicted to the Type 1 fun feeling, mountain climbing is bananas. Like, I'm like, no, that sounds miserable for a while. It's like, yeah, but then you've climbed a mountain and that's fun. Telling stories about the mountain is fun. All the benefits that you get from mountain climbing happen on the other side of it. So I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. There are games that I played where I'm like, I'm not having fun right now, but once I beat this boss, then I'll have fun. And I'll be real, Githra for very few parts of his life, had fun. I, as the player, Wendell, was having fun well more times than my character was having fun. But I think even in the sort of fake story that he wrote, in the game world, he wrote down the story of the campaign because our characters had multiple died. Like many characters had died in the campaign. He's the only character that was there from start to finish. So he's the one that had the whole story. So he wrote it down. And I think he would have written fun into that story. He would have written the humor. He would have written, because he was always a bard and entertainer type person. That's part where I do think I find deep connection with that character. But all of his stuff would have been in reflection. He's a type of person that brings fun to people to sort of lighten their load. And so that feeling is like really important, because you might play a game, the game of capitalism people talk about all the time. That is not necessarily a fun game. Some people are having fun with it. Next scratch. I'm personally struggling with that one right now. And there are days in which it's like the most fun thing in the world. And there's days where I'm just like, this is just a weird slog. But I still have to show up to the game because it's got rules, it's got outcomes. And if I ever feel like I don't have a choice to show up to it, is the exact day that I know it's not going to be fun, because I'm going to feel powerless. I'm going to feel small. I'm going to feel like a victim.
You're gonna feel like, fuck you, I didn't consent to playing Red Rover.
Yes.
Don't run through my hands. What are you doing?
You brought that up earlier, where it's like, I didn't ask to be born. And like in certain spiritual circles, of which on every
we did also.
I believe this, where it's like, oh no, part of the game was, and Alan Watts brings this up, part of the game was, as you like decanted as a soul into a body, was like, I'm gonna do this crazy shit. All right, what's the first step of the game? Forget I made the decision to do this. And it's like, what? Rude. Could you leave me some clues? It's like, yeah, it's in every dope interaction that you have. Those are the clues that you're on the right goddamn path. I was like, this is either the most best game ever designed or just some fuckery. And on the days in which I think of it as a game, it's really fun. And on the days when it's fuckery, I get to scream at my friends while I'm drunk. And that's its own fun game that I play.
Do they scream back, or is it like an excitement scream? Or are you just being like, let's play D&D?
No, it's mostly me complaining and then being like, oh, he's on a tear again. He's mad about the nature of existence once more. And they kind of look at their drinks and don't say a whole lot more, which is why I had to go to the internet to get my feelings out.
I relate to that. The account that's now for the podcast was originally called That Vegan Nugget in my hardcore veganism phase. May she rest in peace. And it was because I needed to talk to other people. I was like, I love and respect my roommates. And in order to keep being friends with them, I need to talk to other people about this. So I'm going to go talk to internet people about this. And same thing that keeps going, where it's that real feeling coming out of you're like, well, I wonder how much of it also is here comes the buckwheat. How much of it is the part between the paradox again, where there's the part of you that, from my outside perspective, maybe I'm projecting, feels like I did choose, like that, you chose to come here and you chose to play this game that you're choosing to play, the buckwheat's choosing to play, and that the part of you that paradoxically also feels like, fuck no, I did not choose this. This is out, and now as I'm on this ramble of philosophies, some of this is getting into the free will determinism of like, did I choose or did I not choose? And I wonder how the perspective of life as a game fits in with that of helping and harming.
Oh yeah,
that like existential dread or just like existential what the fuckery.
Part of me is 100% just like in alignment. I'm like, hell yeah, life's a game. Alan Watts, he's my homeboy. He's like, yeah, universe is just like playing weird jazz, just zabba dabba dooba dooba. And when I'm in my play, it's just like I'm on the sax, and it's great. And then other times, play is a big old fuck you. Like, no, this game is trash. I'm gonna make my own game inside of it, and I'm gonna win that game. And you can go jump in a fucking lake. On the days in which I call it getting pied in the face. I watched a lot of Looney Tunes as a kid, so occasionally it feels like the universe is dunking on me. It's usually the day that I've been the most like petty, and it's like, I'm building my own game. Look at me having fun. And then I run smack into, that's what you're supposed to do the entire time. And I was like, motherfucker, no, I was doing this as a rebellion, not as a way to do the actual. And then I get very angry and I scream at my friends. And then they're like, oh, he just likes screaming. And then I'm playing still. Like there's a weird way in which like it's inescapable. And Alan Watts brings up, again, he's definitely one of like a spiritual mentor of mine, that like the first game is hide and seek. Like you are everything. You are God. You are the great unseen observer. And you're like, you know, it'd be fucking tight experiencing stuff. It's like, yeah, but I know everything. So it's like, okay, cool. So you got to like forget that you know everything and be not everything. And now you can find out that you're everything. How's the experiences of not being everything? Scary as shit, man. It's the craziest thing you're ever going to do. Suddenly you don't know you're everything. So now it's just darkness and misery. What are you going to do with that? I don't know. Make jokes. I don't know. Make art. I don't know. Like become a multi-celled organism and eat each other. What else is there to do? And this weird game of like constantly trying to experience more of like all that is, and then the game of just like fighting entropy, and then the game of like remembering that it's just like, oh yeah, I'm the universe doing shadow puppets with itself. That's funny. It's funny that I forget it. That's the funny part, where every time I'm just like, whoops, got mad about taxes again. That's absurd.
That's one of my favorite dark existential humor that I don't even see as dark, of like, oops, got mad about taxes again. I'm still gonna die regardless.
Yes,
like
or
it doesn't change it.
There's even
I still gonna talk to people and make art today regardless.
Yeah, the next level version of that, and this is again when I get into like my quasi Zen, like super existential mindfulness feelings, which is great. I guess we're here. I get to contain multitudes. I don't remember waking up, which means I don't remember ever falling asleep. Like I don't remember coming into being. So who the heck is the one that woke up? I don't think it's ever died. I don't think there's a meaningful thing called death. There's this weird game that I play where I'm like, hey guys, check this thing out. I'm gonna die. No, this is terrible. And we all get so into it that we forget we're riffing. And on occasion, again, on my better days, I remember that I'm like, yeah, the main eye, the big eye, the huge eye, that thing's not gonna die. Wendell's gonna die, but if I play the game right, we're gonna do it like I did Githra. I got the most Lord of the Rings death ever. This kid had like skated off of dying left and right, whole party members dying in front of him. And finally, what caught up to him when I got possessed by that ghost, the DM was like, let me be real. Unless your party members save you, which they did not, you will die in 1 year of game time. You are a 78-year-old man with a hard life. You're not making it much further than this. And having the ability to write down my story and to reframe it, like I got to participate in, like, again, even inside this game, the point of art to like frame, to provide meaning, to like pass it forward to the next generation. And in another game that we played, hats off to you, my dungeon master Alan, I didn't know where the setting was. We were just playing D&D again. It was great. And I was playing just a completely different character. But my friend Chris Glaske, also shout out to Chris Glaske, who's a new player.
Hi, Chris.
And he always would make these like joke characters. I get mad at him because like you can make a joke, you can have a character that's funny, but your character itself shouldn't be a joke, if that makes sense. Like you can play with humor, but I don't like it when people don't take their characters seriously enough. So he'd always make these pun names. One of his characters was called Lit Fam. One of his characters was named One Hunted. And so he would always do that. I was like, this sucks. He started playing a bard for the first time. And in my humble opinion, when you play a bard, you finally figure out what D&D is about. It's about storytelling. It's not about killing goblins and stuff. It's about collaborative storytelling. The bard is worse at everything. It's the jack of all trades, master of none. It's not good at anything except storytelling, except being like the part that like helps everyone out tell their stories better. So when he started playing that character, I was like, my boy's grown up. This is great. And he ends up finding Githra's book. His character, Brad the Bard, ends up finding Githra's book, and it immediately, like, for the players, shifts our perception of the world. We're like, we're in the same world, but thousands of years in the future. We didn't know. We thought we were some complete different things. And for me, as the player, is finding another character find a book that me as a character had made 2 years ago in real time, but actually thousands of years ago. And I'm like, I'm in a mind fuck right now. But it also felt like amazing. It did feel like his adventure had mattered. And like, I knew it had mattered to me. Like by the time we played this new game, I was already like shifting and growing. And moving to this personal development thing. But to know that it had mattered for that actual world and the players of the world, like that's the thing that hit me, where I was like, oh, yeah, this mattered. And so like that feeling of mattering is sort of satisfaction. I'm looping it back to play. It's hard to define play because it is a feeling. I can point at it in people, like that's what I do. I'll be like, yo, you're a kid, you're on the playground, what were you doing when you were having fun? And so like I can get people into like that moment of it. But even when I asked them to talk about it, by the time they were having it, they didn't have any language to describe it. So even when they go back to there, they're like, I feel like bubble gum in my chest. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything, that's nonsense. But everyone does have that feeling. On occasion, I'll meet someone who's just never had fun their entire life. I don't tend to actually interface with those folk, but you can still kind of trip them up, because I'm a very petty person. My life got a lot better when I embraced pettiness. That's someone like, how mad have you ever been? Who do you fucking hate? And they're like, and you can see their eyes light up. I hate so and so. And I'm like, hey, great. Take the anger away, and what is left? And it's this weird, playful joy of just like, hell yeah, it is fun for me to hate whomstever. And so that's kind of a hack to sort of find your playful feeling. But like you can have playful feelings with all of the emotions. Kind of what I found. Like I tend to have a very strong kind of anger, fiery energy, Aries moon with my play. So I'm like, I like winning, I like overcoming things, people dunking on folk. It's amazing. But I also have a Pisces Venus. So like there's play of just making beautiful images with my friends, just like, oh my God, it folds, and it's just such a perfect image, vignette of the rain is falling, and that's a sort of play. It doesn't look like it, but it is playing. Like trying to make my friends cry on playlists is just like, look, did you cry today? Hell yeah, I win. That's my
that was a good Pisces Aries overlap of like anger. Did you cry? But did you cry though? Did you sob? And then hearing all that, I wonder, you can't, to interject that, maybe how much of play do you feel like is the indescribable? Obviously words fall short for everything and are just pointing at things. And hearing all that, I'm wondering if play is one of the main things that, like, in its definition, cannot be defined.
Yeah, it's very personal. Like that's the thing that I found out about play, is that like, well, I can make games digestible to like every person, like here's the rules, here's what's going on, even here's how you win. I can't necessarily point to the place where someone is going to be having play in the game. Like I can invite it in certain ways, but I won't really ever know. And looping back to the actual first question, how much of Githra did I make up? Beautiful question. I'm so glad that it was asked. I remember the day. I sometimes will do really intense backstories. It'll be like, oh my God, they were here and then they had this stuff happened and I built that their entire life. And then the plot starts. I remember with Githra, I was like, no, I'm going, and it's funny to me now, I'm going straight down the middle. I'm just playing a bard. I love playing bards. I've played bards over and over. Like I was looking for a real basic, easy situation. Like as a player, I know that I love playing bards, which is called a class. It's kind of like your character's job. Just cracking jokes, having a good time, wooing ladies. Just that was going to be like the whole shtick. Little did he know that not only was he going to be a bard, he's going to end up being a warlock and kind of the main character of this campaign. His character emerged over time. It emerged like I had the name, I had kind of the shtick and the vibe, and just let stuff happen. And in real time, I'd be like, I think our first adventure, we inn burned down and we had to save the half elf servers because my DM was actually running the same game for two parties, so it was the same world, but he was just doing it with two sets of players. My character decides to save the waitresses, in the sense of not just like save them from the burning building, but like, no, come on with us, we're gonna help escort you to Tenuate. Other party doesn't. And so immediately there's like a timeline shift. And suddenly I realized, oh, Githra is someone who helps people. Okay, that's fun to know. And as I kept sort of exploring it and pulling the thread, I was finding out who Githra was in real time. I had randomly thrown out that like one of his core ideals was he wants to have a bardic patron. He wants to just like work for some great noble house and it'll be great. And he gets into shenanigans because of that. But like the types of shenanigans that we got into kind of came from the dungeon master, kind of came from how the other characters interface. So part of the fun was just like, I didn't know who Githra was. I was finding it out, and I was finding out that I was liking him more and more as his life was getting worse and worse. So there was something there about like the unknowability, the surprise. I played characters since where I was like, no, I've got this dude's shtick up and down. I've got the backstory, and you can still have fun with that because characters change. Like the whole point of a good story is that your character is going to change. Githra's change was so quick and so organic because I didn't have anything to sort of like push it against. And so there is like a range of like how much character you can make and then how much you sort of make up on your own. For me, I do like to build my characters around their roles, especially the early roles. Like it's kind of like the universe telling me like, oh, he flubbed up here. And you can make the choice that this flub is out of character. Like he rolled really bad, but it's against his normal like skill set. Or this flub is actually evidence of like, oh no, this is exactly the kind of way that Githra messes up. And I actually did end up making him very awkward around women, which was really fun. It was kind of something I was working through on my own at the same time, but like enough so that like there was separation for me where it was like, no, I'm not playing myself. Like this person is earnest and fails at it in a way that I never would. I'm like, no, I gotta be like clever and charming and good. I'm like, nah, Githra makes big swings and he falls in love with one of the half-elf girls who ends up turning into a fire elemental and destroying the town. And I was like, well, goddamn, like that's gonna do something to a person as they're growing up over time that like, oh, the only one person that I've ever like flirted with ends up being like a literal fire demon that destroys everything. Like, you know, you've watched enough stories to kind of be like, okay, well, that's a lot of things to work through emotionally, like in a character. And so that became very exciting because I was like, it never happened to me before. Of course, then my therapist might go, excuse me, what are you talking about? Don't you know about I'm like, shut up. This is a game. But I did seeing parts of myself like sneak in because essentially when you get pulled too far out of your element, the only way to ground something is with personal experience. It is with like, I don't know what it's like to get possessed by a necromancer and forced to take warlock, but I do know what depression's like. Let's see if I can do something with that. I don't know what it's like to have to like leave this the country because I did a bad job of saving an entire nation, but I do know what it feels like to like not have to leave a job that I wasn't like that I was really excited about or something. Finding ways to kind of do that translation work can happen in the role playing.
That all makes me think of something you shared before we started recording about the inner essence versus the outer. And it sounds like maybe with this character, you chose his essence or certain parts of it. And then in a very cool co-creative metaphor, there were things you could control and things you could not control that built it all around. And then you're there playing the game and watching your real life game and seeing what are the overlaps here, or what am I reflecting, or like what am I seeing in this?
Yeah, I mean that.
Well, also being like, okay, I'm playing a game with my friend, like the layers of that too, where it's like, you know, you're like, your therapist might say, like you were saying, or all the self psychoanalysis, and also in the moment you're sitting playing D&D with friends.
Yep. Well, and that's why I love it as a tool, because it does layers. Like, you know, I talked about my writer friends where they're like, yeah, I kind of tap into that, but I have to work really, really, really hard at it. I'm like, I do this shit every week for fun, not thinking about it. And that kind of also like, as far as like helping people tap into their creativity, I'm just like, my engineer brain is just like, just from an efficiency standpoint, like the amount of hours I'd have to log into helping someone like hone a writerly craft versus the amount of hours it would take to help me help anyone play role-playing games. Like I will bring a set of dice with me sometimes. There's a game that I love. It's very simple. It's one page of all the rules, everything that you need to play the game. It's called Lasers and Feelings. You only have one stat and you're either rolling lasers or feelings. Like I'm doing a technological solution, and so I want to roll for lasers, or I'm using an emotional intuitive solution, I'm rolling for feelings. It's like, great, roll the dice. And I'll do that. I've done that with friends where I'm just like, I'm bored, let's play role-playing games. And these stories will come out of these people just like immediately, and they won't be thinking about it. They won't be trying to like do craft. It's just enough structure to let people play, to tap into whatever that feeling is. And so that was definitely kind of like, there's a there. There's something about this that like breaks down whatever craft is supposed to do to like stop people from being engaged, from showing up as their authentic selves, I guess.
It gives a way to access or see different things. I think there's a technical difficulty with Wi-Fi here. Your audio seems to be back, but your video is frozen. Audio did like a couple Charlie Browns. Can you hear me? Testing.
I've been able to hear you the whole time.
No, he's frozen.
Oh, am I still frozen?
Good pose. What do we do? We're gonna come back.
Are we back? Is it good?
Yep. Like you came back in
the whole time. I was like, oh, this is so weird. I'm hearing everything, but I wasn't being able to be heard. That's classic. That's a classic situation.
The classic. You're back now. You are back. Nope. Yes. No. We are back. Okay. You used the word art, and I want to shift into bringing that into the conversation, or like I'd like to bring that into the conversation of this too, of way layered in of play and art and life mastery, whatever mastering of the house of the whatever master of the is, because my head keeps going back to the Red Rover joke and just the general concept and your definition of play, about how much participation and consent and someone's active choice, which I love too, is another one of the C's to like well before the creation C, that I keep coming back to, that of how important that feels, that is a big part. Speaking of play, that is a big part of it.
Why are you screaming at the box again, Mom?
Right? Why are you screaming at the box, human? Thank you for being patient with the wheat post-surgery. So definitely a more distracted recording, which in some ways actually helps it be a little more playful, to be less serious. One day we will have another recording without Buckwheat and a cone. That will be a different kind of game.
Yes. Well, I mean, going to
games and arts.
There's the art of, yes, I've created a beautiful image, sound, vibe, experience, what have you, which is nice. People like making beautiful stuff. I like making beautiful stuff. And then there's art as, like you said earlier, problem solving. There's art like where we're trying to get this certain result. And so now that I have to artfully come up with a way to do that. And then there's
pause. I was saying the opposite. I was saying games as problem solving. Like in my head, games, this gesture. In my head, games are the, like, there's an objective, here's the problem, here's the solution. Whereas art, when I feel and think into singing and dancing, that, and other Alan Watts-isms too, where like there's not a start or a stop, there's not end goal, there's not an objective of the dance.
Sort of. Here's the question that gets me thinking about this. There's no answer, but this is the one that complicates it. That first cave painting. We go to the cave painting. Ugg is just like, whoa, 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 whoa. All we know is that the painting is there. The question that I used to ask people, I used to do interviews, college entrance interviews, so I got to like fuck with kids to see if they were allowed to go to college. And the questions I would ask is, was the first cave painting art or technology?
Ooh. Can it be both?
I mean, yes, but if it's both, that means that I do think art does problem solving as well. Like, again, like designers are like, I got to get people to like Coke, not cocaine, Coke the brand. Like, I got to do that. Now I'm going to do it using a beautiful image, and maybe I'll even put a little self-expression in it, but there is still problem solving happening, which is why
art therapy is a therapeutics, or
so you can introduce it. I think art does have two functions. They are paradoxical. I think there is this sort of self-expression, aliveness thing that happens from art, but I do think there's also a problem-solving element, which is why I can sneak games into it. Games interfaces it's really the problem solving of play. It's just like, well, you could just be playing. Like you see kids just in a field going, blah.
Pause and slow down again on that. You're saying, just because I like that a lot, and my brain wants to slow down to process. You're saying that art is the problem solving.
No, so
games are the problem solving
of play. If games are an art form, so let's say art's up here.
And then give the umbrella. Art is the biggest umbrella.
Art's up here, and art has two functions: self-expression, problem solving. Games are actually underneath art. People would sometimes make games separate from art. Like, no. Games is an art form. It's just a problem solving. What problems it trying to solve? How do we make play more generative or get results or actually start affecting things in reality? Again, kids in the field can just be running around being like, I'm playing. Something changes when they start playing tag. And I don't even know quite what it is, but I do know that when you start adding the structure, the unnecessary obstacles, like that's really where the problem solving starts coming in from. So it's like, well, yeah, if you've got a problem and you want to solve it, you still can use art, but if you use game, it's easier for you to solve that problem in a playful way. It's got an interface to it now. So if I'm sitting here and there's like a big wall of boulders, I can do work. I can maybe as a stonemason use my craft to move the boulders, and maybe that's fun. Or I can be like, we're playing stonemason, and suddenly it's a different experience. And suddenly I'm like, this is hard. It's like, you're doing a good job at stonemasons. They have a rough and tumble life. That's a bad pun, but like it creates sort of a healthy distance where it's just like, yeah, now you want to go back to the game or do you want to put it down? You get to introduce some of that choice in a way in which like work is so necessary. It is so absolutely, at least the way that we interface within society, like you don't really get to choose as much. It's not an empowering experience, or if it is, it's very struggle based, where again, play has that constant, at least opportunity to have a fun payoff, a play playoff. Because at the very least, you get to choose what kind of a player do you want to be? What kind of a stonemason do you want to do? Do you want to do it sort of straightforward and you just kind of lift rocks, or do you want to add a new spicy challenge to it where I will only do it with my left hand? It's like, you're doing really bad stonemasonry. Yes, but I'm doing it and I'm having fun with it. It might actually get done if I do it in a backwards, weird way, because I'll keep getting the reward of fun to keep doing it. Whereas I might lift 3 rocks the right way and then be like, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore. One might not look as good, which is why I think the art discussion becomes interesting, where it's like some people will make games to look absurd. And so the art person will be like, ew, this doesn't look nice. This isn't art. And I'm like, the amount of play and craft that it takes to purposefully shift a reality to make it palatable is a whole damn art form. It's just usually invisible. It's usually internal. If it is interfacing with other people, it's cultural. It's very invisible, subtle shit.
That makes me think a lot again about the story you were telling about your character and how different it was. You were like having the best time ever with his worst experiences, and how much it changes it when it's. Do you do that ever in your day-to-day life of like, if you need to clean or do, as people will call them, very adulting or humaning, or the life and death and taxes kinds of things? Do you gamify that for yourself ever in the same way?
I wish I did it more. I do it. I think the main way that I did it, and my whole brain was like, and now you're done, was just choosing to make games my craft. Like every time that
that's a huge choice
like this, I'm like, yo, okay, great. Now we're jamming, we're playing the game, the art of conversation, and a little back and forth, little boundaries, little up. It's great. When I'm in my client calls, I'm just like, yo, I'm in dungeon master mode. Here's the thing, here's what's going on, and we're in play. When I'm in front of the kids doing this, oh, it's great. Even when I'm making content, sometimes it feels like that, but there are parts of like businessing, adulting, where something in me, again, I think the grumpus, self-serious part is like, no, this is not a game. This is very serious, and we have to do it. And if you don't do it, I'm gonna chock you so full of cortisol, your butt's gonna fall off.
Like very literal life or death, that huge central nervous system intense.
Yeah, it's got to terrorize me in order to get me to do certain things, where there's other things where I'm like, I'm doing this because it's fun, and it's a constant practice. Like It's why we kind of joked earlier. I was like, oh, I don't teach people to master allyship. I teach them to master the game. I'm actually very good at the game when I choose to play it. The downside of gamefulness is that you do have to keep re-engaging with it. Pokemon don't play itself. I got to turn Pokemon on. I am not Pokemon. It is a game that is separate from me, and I have to at least spend the energy to do it. And if I've got things in my brain saying, you're not allowed to play Pokemon today, it won't get played. Now let's move Pokemon to, oh, the meta game of cleaning my dishes. If I don't turn it into Pokemon, then it's just a chore. And so now I don't have the fun way to do it, which I could spend energy to do and then get it done. Yay. And then I'm also not doing it because it sucks. And so that is the one weakness, is that like, how committed are you to shifting into that gameful mode? Because as a society, we don't really reward people for that. People look at me and they're like, what a frivolous man this man is. He's a delight to be around, but I won't trust him with things. He's no. And I'm like, yeah, because we've made it so that the game is, who suffered more today? You get points. Who didn't suffer? You're not useful to us. And I'm like,
yep.
Weird game. Definitely not going to play it. I'd send it back if anyone gave me this game to play. And yet if we want to go the real meta existential zone, what happens if you awake Matrix style into a game where like everything about your values is upside down, where it's a game in which like you have to have anxiety and suffering and be in a victim mindset for anyone to take you seriously, and you're also aware enough to know, I think inside myself fun and play and creativity and joy matters, but also human connection matters, and the people that I have to connect with are these people who don't like it. So you get these two equally absurd choices. As a game, pretend to be miserable for clout, or don't be miserable and enjoy the weird game that's going to happen where people try and police you for not doing what they're doing.
Amen to all of that. Have you heard the term oppression Olympics or depression Olympics, or
Yep.
it feels kind of like in the woke off, which is another fun term of it, where it's like you're most woke if you've, yeah, please pocket it. If you're most woke, the most you the most you've suffered, or I'm so glad you brought up all of that, because there is again that weird paradox where you were saying like people not taking, if you are being playful, then people are potentially assuming that you're not able to be serious too. Or if someone's being serious, then people potentially assume they're not able to be playful too. Or even in my experiences with it, it's really interesting to see how people respond to play. And it's been a really helpful indicator for me of who to prioritize connecting with and who to prioritize my time with. And it took me a while to discern, constant learning of, I feel like you kind of danced around this point of somebody seeing someone else playing and being angry or jealous or upset that something else isn't happening, like you're saying, of controlling those decisions, or they're seeing some part of them that wants to play and feeling like, well, that's not fair because I'm not allowed to play, or all of those things. That saying this out loud is almost its own play, or it's like its own other game to be like, oh, like
as
you
know
can't
about the
play.
game? You know about the thing? It's fun. It's like there's a game we used to play in high school and in college called Assassins, and you never knew who was playing assassin. All you had was your target. And so when you'd find out that someone was like playing, it was either a good day or a bad day. Usually you find out someone's playing because they're trying to kill you. Actually, like, oh no, you're playing, shoot. I can see because you've got a gun and you're trying to assassinate me. When you find out that someone else is playing, especially someone who you didn't expect, there's like this, like, ooh, you're in on the game. You're doing the thing. It's the same feeling I get when I do meet people that are like, I play D&D, or I'll meet them in job interviews. I was like pitching my stuff because, again, people will accept you to the degree that they're ready for it. And so, yay me, Black men doing diversity, equity, inclusion work. Doesn't matter what I call it. Everyone's going to be like, yeah, come on down. And they'll be like, yes, what was your program? Mastering allyship? This is great. We'd like to master. Like, no. Sorry, excuse me. I'm just a silly little guy. We're mastering the game. And they're like, okay. And you can kind of see them be like, oh, we're bringing game into this. Well, how can I do it? And half the time, and I'll be like, I know I'm in the right room. They'll be like, I play D&D too. Tell me more about this. Help me sell this to my boss. I'm like, yes, this is the revolution. Because it is insane, because not because, but like because
the choices that you mentioned, where those are the makes me think of the quote of being insane, or what is it, like being sane in an insane world is, I'm paraphrasing, the when you're saying that, when you're in that decision of, oh, do I fake something to assimilate, or do I not assimilate and lose out on this connection that is also vital?
Yeah, well, and it's the thing that I was riffing at is that, like, we don't treat children super well in this world. Children are, as far as we are concerned, insane. If you treat a child and hold a child to the standard of adults, they are sociopathic fucking weirdos. But if you can hold, like, the fact that they are actually learning and experiencing with wonder and awe the world for the first time, and people really held that in their awareness and took responsibility for that, we'd show up in a completely different way. And so, like, because we foist all of play, the huge exception, this is something I have a big stick at my butt about, but like, adult play is always transgression, at least culturally. It's like, I'm gonna go to the casinos, or I'm gonna like do sex stuff, and it's like, dope, like, not slut shaming anybody, but it's weird that like that play isn't as honored as when we think about like the childish play and all this stuff. And the childish play is usually dismissed as nothing good or important can sort of emerge out of that. The adult play, we gotta blow off steam somehow. But that, I'm like, what if play as a form of being artful, and since art does solve problems, like, how do we use that to like make the world a better place? Like, that is the big question of mastering allyship, is how to make the world a better place using play. Mastering Game of Life was just like, how do we be happy? Like, I could just start with being happy. Like, we can get enough happy people on this planet, they'll be too busy to ruin other people's lives unless their happiness is formed by hurting other people. And then at least we'd know, it's like, okay, we found out that you were trying your hardest to be happy and you didn't fucked up some people's lives. Now we can get you to the right therapist or the right jail. But I truly believe that half the time people are doing whack stuff is them playing this weird shadow game where it's like, I have to deal with having these weird feelings and traumas in this crazy society, and I just need to explode. And then they do, and it's a sad, upsetting situation. And if we could invite this different kind of energy that seems like abundant, I don't know why, but kids will play until they want to go to sleep. They will play, and then they'll be like, I gotta play, and they'll be like, you see a kid coming up, I don't want to stop, but I'm done. Like, I've left it all on the four-square court. It's kind of sad sometimes. I was like, bro, like, you didn't save any for like eating. There's a whole meal you gotta eat.
Yeah.
And that, just seeing that, this is like the Monsters Inc. lesson of just like, yo, like, shifting from that fear to like joy, like, for whatever reason, it just is more abundant. I don't know why. My engineer brain goes, here's the thing, I'm a stick in the mud just as much as you guys, but I can't deny the numbers. Like,
it's literally data.
Play mode, it's better.
My brain works like that too, where it's literally data. And I come back, I agree with that. Art does solve problems for the person making it and for other people. And then it encourages other people to make art, which that seems to be very problem solving too. Like, if you're just saying of more people being happy means more people who are making themselves happy, making other people happy, and letting other people be happy.
Yep. And like, at the higher levels of play, because there's always levels, you actually had me pegged. It was nuts when you were like, yeah, so your engineer brain, which is the up, down, left, right. I was like, what? How'd you know? Because I'm going to talk about some up, down stuff. There's levels to play. Like, I do feel like the people who get to play the most, like the purest form, the most abundant form is with children, but the purest form is adults connected to their inner children. We're just smart enough. We come up with more interesting games. We actually start choosing diversity and more interesting problems for ourselves that a kid could never. When I watch some of these circus people juggling knives, I'm like, children are not allowed to do that. Literally, only an adult can learn the upper edges of like that crazy nonsense. And you're doing it in ways that like I couldn't even believe before. Like, there's some D&D games I played where I'm like, this is not for children, and yet it is 100% bringing up this stuff. Like the writer's room for TV, I'm like, those guys are having a blast making these Game of Thrones episodes. This shit is fucked up though. Playful energy, but again, the things that you start being able to play with as you gain more perspectives and a stronger awareness of reality It's fucking dope. But the downside is, again, across that seriousness mode, like there is this aspect where people will think if I'm being playful about something, I don't care. And I'm like, it is the exact opposite. Sometimes the best way to care for something is to not take it seriously at all. If you're taking yourself so seriously that you don't want to be on this planet anymore, dope. That is absolutely fine. I will never begrudge anyone that decision. But if it's someone who I want to be on the planet, who I think could have a good time here, I'm going to be like, I have to treat that thought as absurd. It's absurd. Don't you know about Pokemon? Don't you know about juggling knife people? Don't you know about all these other things worth living? Like, I can't take that seriously if I'm going to be someone who wants to have a certain set of people around me all the time. And that place comes from a deep place of care. It just doesn't look like the weird script of life, the weird game of life that we're playing, in which, yes, the only thing that you can cash in for caring points is seriousness and struggle. And I'm like, but what if you do care and all you have is play points? Well, sucks to be you. And I'm over here being like, oh, sucks to be me, right? Well, I'm going to make a game within the game where I can convert my play points into serious points. And actually, I'll get more results than you assholes get with your seriousness. And now, and again, that's a very petty part of me, but here's the thing. He ain't wrong. It's absurd. Every day I'll be like, out of spite. Oh. So my Mastering Allyship program, this is my favorite story, but it's also like very upsetting to me, at least, as someone who's for the longest time tried to be a good person. I use air quotes because it's not interesting to me anymore. I want to be a happy person. I want to make other people around me happy. That has nothing to do with morality as far as I'm concerned. Incidentally, though, I do end up doing more good things for having abandoned that. People get real mad when they hear that shit. But what happened is that I was shilling my Mastering the Game of Life program. George Floyd gets murdered, and all my white friends, of whom I'm the only Black friend that they have, reach out to me and go, are you okay? I'm like, I'm actually doing the best I've ever had. I moved home. I've got this new business. It's going pretty well. Everything's dope. I'm like, are you sure you don't have to put up a front for me? I'm like, I'm deadly sure. Like, I'm pretty highly developed personal development person. Like, I know how to deal with my emotions. And then, of course, I was like, are you okay? And they're like, well, whoa. And I'm like, this is the grossest way for someone to find out that they need to like get care. This is awful. Also, I've got this whole program and a set of tools that people could use to actually like fix these things, but instead they're doing this stuff. So out of pure spite, I felt it's like a pebble in my shoe. I was like, I'm mad. Not enough mad to do anything about it, but okay, I'm gonna take all my anger seriously and actually like hold space for it. A lot of times with playfulness, you got to take something seriously to get the distance, to look at it, to then play with it. So I did that, take it seriously, distance, play with it. And I realized, oh, I was feeling very petty and very angry because I was just like, y'all are all miserable. Y'all want to be good allies. I've got the meta system to like teach you how to be playful about anything and get good at anything. What if we just applied this to allyship? And as a bit, it was a bit. Everything on Twitter, I've made a post, is like every good thing that's happened to me is a bit that got away from me. And usually like a spiteful one. That's what I mean by like the pie hitting me in the face. I was like, I'm gonna just for a month sell this Mastering the Game of Allyship course. I'm just gonna take my tools from Mastering the Game of Life, not change anything. Give it a passion speech, be like, hey guys, we're gonna solve this. Here's how we solve it, blah, blah, blah. And what I thought was gonna happen is no one's gonna sign up, and then I get to be even more petty about it and be like, ha, y'all guys are full of shit. This is amazing. I get to go back and live my life. Or the usual suspects, my homies who like working with me are gonna show up. Like maybe 8-10 people are gonna show up. Goddamn, 130 people showed up. I was like, no, this is a bit. I mean, no one knew it was a bit, and it's been years enough now that I can admit to it. But I was like, oh shit, I've got to make this now. I've got to like figure out like what are these people wanting? Like, what are they trying to do? I didn't pitch anti-racism. I didn't pitch anything specific. Actually, very specifically was like being vague because I knew what I was going to ultimately offer them. And ended up talking to them, and a lot of it was around guilt and shame and this clenching feeling. And it was what I was hearing was, this game sucks. It's rigged. I can't win. There's no looping around being an ally that ends in satisfaction. So I was like, yeah, that's a bad game. Don't play a game like that. That's just being tortured recreationally, and you don't even like it. And I built this sort of game around that and helping people get in touch with those parts and stuff. But I remember I was like, this was spite. I was pissed when I started making this. But even in that being angry, there was still a playful way to show up to that. Again, for me, it's pranks. I was a prank. I was trying to dunk on everybody. I was trying to create self-satisfaction for myself and accidentally invented a business. It's the silliest thing I've ever done in my fucking life. And it's absurd. Every day I think about this, I go, people have done less for more reasonable reasons, for more kind. reasons, and I'm out here trying to help people because I got mad one day at my literal loved ones and wanted to make them feel foolish and failed at it.
Which for astrology language, now that you shared, is a really classic Aries moon stereotype. And there's different love languages and different play languages. And I do hear love in that, and that you're angry because you love them, because you're like, why are you not seeing this? And for any human, when someone messages you to check in and be like, how are you? Except for it's actually that they're wanting you to ask them how they, like, not the conversational, like, let's both talk about it. The very pointed, like, I need to talk about my feelings with you, but I'm going to pretend that like the story you're saying of they're checking in and are you sure? And then when you're like, are you okay? Then you're like, of course you're going to be fucking spiteful and petty. Cause then you're hit with, oh, you're playing a different game than the one you led me to believe, which was that you were actually concerned about this. Frankly, I don't see that as petty. I see that as being very reasonable. And all of the stuff with,
my petty part, if anything, very validated by this.
You're welcome. I can sense the petty Aries moons. I dated an Aries moon. I have a Sag moon. I understand the fire. It's a little bit of a different, like, my fire petty is more like philosophy TED talk than the Aries anger petty that's just like, fuck you, I'm gonna do this and you suck and here's why. And I'm like, sometimes you're right about that, Aries moons. Like, sometimes people are sucking and they need someone to be like, what the fuck is up with this? And it's so funny about bits, and then I was like, improv bits and that gamifying, that then that became such a real game for you. And the other part where I want to tie into creativity and creation is anger is a powerful fuel, one of the most powerful fuels, and rage is a very powerful fuel. And I relate a lot to that motivation. And then also the shame and judgment around that motivation, that anger is bad or isn't supposed to be shown, or different cultural things that are, women can be emotional except for anger, and men can't be emotional except for they can be angry, or all sorts of different cultural lines of like how anger gets really vilified. And anger has kept the podcast going at times, and spite has kept the podcast going at times. The humanity is built from several nuggets, one of them being rage at there being people who go hungry on a planet that has food being thrown away, and that has always had more than enough food for everyone. And I feel rage and spite and a deep, sure, I feel depression, and I feel love for people who are doing food distribution. All that's there too. And there's a very real anger that I feel is necessary. Maybe you could say, kind of like the definition, like it's an unnecessary block, because there is a point of anger that backfires, I will say as well, or a pettiness.
It's emotions are like magic. Like, there is this way in which, like, okay, just like releasing it versus being artful, being creative, being like, okay, if a creative can like put that anger on a spigot and like do something with it, now you got a lightsaber, now you got a tool, now you've got something that you can actually do something with.
You have mastering the game of allyship.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the crazy. It's funny, I'm jumping in between these perspectives because, like, you're right, and also I'm just like, I am still digesting the pure absurdity of just like, if you had asked me at 10 years old, you're gonna be the most angry you've ever been in your life, in like a very like spiteful way to people you care about, and it's gonna create some of the greatest work that you've ever done. I've been like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. That's the craziest thing I've thought of. And so there is this connection between play, creativity, and I'll be real, insanity, like the thing that's going to feel not real or disconnected from reality. Play is disconnected from reality. There's it's an emotional state that does feel kind of like timeless. Like, you lose control of time. It feels like it's happening outside of time. Like, I look back, I joke, if I ever make a memoir, it'll be like, my greatest memories never happened. Because like, I remember Githra in the world doing stuff. I have memories and feelings, and I feel tender about like all the stuff that happened but it was in the play space. It's outside of that, but also in a weird way, it does feel like it's, and I have heard this statement about art, that art exists in the timeless. The reason we can look at like the pyramids, it's like that shit still slaps. It was not a fixed time thing. I can look at it and go, this is great. And I imagine they felt this was great when they were there too. And the aliens, when they come and are like, humans are gonna go, like, look at this weird pyramid those assholes made. This is fantastic.
So art and play, you'd say, are both out of time space?
Yes, I think they are eternal. If that first game was hide and seek, if that first bit of art was the forgetting of all that isness, if that first game was, hey, you know what's fun? Time. Let's be inside of it as a bit. Like the bit that God got away from them was, I'm gonna decant myself into time and humans and beings. Whoops, that got out of hand. Let's see if we can pull them back up into understanding what this whole mickamuck actually is.
And this reality, this physical that is here right now, or virtually, or however, that we both have bodies that are sitting on something. I agree with that. And I also am very much drawn to the paradox of how games and playing and art are some of the times I feel the most in time space and the most grounded, and that paradox of flow state where you're totally out of time, and also it's the most I feel in it, or like I'm flowing with time, I feel like is the best I can describe it.
Like the present. Ooh, there was a chart. I can't bring it up. I'm going to try and do it. I'm going to use the power of imagination. Imagine a circle, and inside the circle, right in the middle, is the present moment. A lot of people imagine past and present as, okay, circles outside of that first circle in the present moment. I feel like play and art are the things that go, nope, those two circles are inside the present moment circle. And that, like, when you are writing sci-fi, you're not going somewhere. You've just tapped into a different part of the present moment called the future. And when you're writing historical fiction or even history, it's like you're not really going back in time. You're tapping into some weird present moment that we've labeled the past. And sometimes there's weird overlaps, and we never quite leave that circle, but sometimes it's fun to play a game as though there are three circles. It's like, isn't that, well, there's three of them. It's like, yeah, and where the hell's those three of them? Oh, and an imagined present moment awareness that's still inside the never escapable present. I sometimes get mad about presents. It's very masculine to me, where I'm like, I can't leave here. I have this image that's been living rent free in my head, where like I'm in a party and I'm start off just like, I wake up in this room and someone's talking to me. I'm like, okay, I'm in this party. Okay, this is cool. And eventually I recognize there's a door. I'm like, cool, I'm gonna go through this door. Go through the door. Oh, there's another room in the party. I'm like, okay, dope. Oh, amazing. Have a good time. Okay, I'm done with this. Go into another door. Eventually I just keep opening doors, and suddenly I'm just like, okay, but where's outside? Like, this party has been going on. I've seen so many different rooms. Where is outside? And I keep searching. Sometimes I'll even pass through rooms that are like good. It's like, this is the dopest room ever, but I'm not here for this. I'm here to find where the hell outside is. And then one day I realized this, in this sort of dream image, I don't know where it came from, but it just lives in, again, the wibbly wobbly. I decide, oh, I don't think there is an outside. I think that's an absurd question. I don't even know where I got the idea that there was an outside. And then there's sometimes this weird crushing grief where I was like, there's some dope ass rooms that I was not present in. Obviously I was present in them. I remember them. I was there, but I was too busy trying to look for the next door to really sort of like stay put. And for whatever reason, like, then the concept of like, well, can I build my own room? Like, what happens if you start actually being a participant to this party? And maybe that's how all those rooms got built and stuff. And even just
A co-creative.
Yeah, it was like a crushing depression that kind of fell on me as I resolved this. I don't even know when I did it, but that realization of like, there is no outside. You've been kind of desecrating the inside, but now you have the first choice that you can ever make, which is, how would you like to be here? And it's how I reconcile that paradox of just like here and there, where it's like, all right, I've got these memories of this space that I only existed because I thought there was an out space. And I can still use those to be like, all right, maybe I can't move fast enough to go back to where I've been, but I can incorporate elements of what I liked about there here. And maybe I'm the host. Maybe that's why I'm not finding outside. It's my house. Like, there's still more questions that come from that, but like, for whatever reason, that image came up, and I think about it a lot because it is how I reconcile the like, timeless and the not timeless. The what the hell is memory? What is imagining? Are they the same thing? I don't know. Question that matters though is the party good? Like, where are the snacks? Is the music bumping?
Is it fun? Is it
Is it
playful?
fun?
Where are the snacks? Is the music bumping? There's so many metaphors in that, and I also feel like that ties so well into creation, where you're creating the house in your mind, your imagination, your memory. Now that's getting into what's it called? Inception, of like your like creation based on past memories and then making things. That sounded like a
I don't think I've ever left that movie. I think I walked into that movie in 2010 and I'm still there. This has all just been limbo.
I have nothing, I have no way to say that that's not the case, and it feels,
I wish they'd
it feels right.
When I walked in, they're like, here's your totem. You're not going to be able to leave the movie. Or maybe I did, it fell in the popcorn. Like, fuck.
Kind of rude to like put a movie like that out and not give people a totem or something, right? Really. Maybe that's their game though. Were they playing that game with the movie to be like, haha, fun mind fuckery?
Chris Nolan is in a category of people that I call absolute fuckers. I love his stuff. It's not a good or a badness of it. There's no moral quality to it, but when I just feel it from tip to taint, that man is an absolute fucker for putting that thing in the world. And when I think about my own creative ambitions, I'm like, how do I dunk on Inception? How do I dunk on Inception knowing that like there's a real part of me that's like, I do not know if I ever left that movie. Like there is this deep desire, expansion of wanting to like do better than that, but I have no concept. I don't even know how it's still hitting my world. It's still at work. And I feel like the best art does that. This is me looping it back around. The best art stays with you. Like I made that same bit about like Lord of the Rings. I was like, I turn that shit on or open that book and I'm still living. It's living rent free in my brain. Like Frodo is still in there doing the thing. Ow, I totally fit. This is so funny. I didn't make you a promise, but I did hint very strong. I made a promise, Mr. Frodo. A promise. That one set itself up too well. I did talk mad game that I was going to talk hella about Star Wars. I'm like, there's no conversation that I can have that isn't going to somehow get to Star Wars. I got so smug about it, and we're nearing like the hour, and I talked about Lord of the Rings and Inception before goddamn Star Wars. So what I will say is this, I'll leave with this anecdote, just for funsies and just because I'm smug and I don't want to get dunked on by myself. I will do it. I'm very unkind to myself at times. The first movie that I ever watched was a drive-through double feature of Star Wars and Lion King. And if we want to be real about that, those are the movies that I never left. Like that's like that's one of my first memories, even just like I wake up and what is going on with this? And so from a creative standpoint, just like rehashing, rejigging the long time ago galaxy far, far away, circle of life, you just put those on repeat in infinite fugues and you got something that'll probably rhyme with my life.
Something that'll probably what?
Rhyme with my life.
And go into whatever art and play, because you're still in there watching those movies and watching Inception, that will impact whatever you are making. And I'm sure there's bits of those movies somehow that come out in both of your programs and in your day-to-day stuff too, where in any kind of creative thing where it's still a part of you. And maybe that's some of it too with all of this kind of that timeless spacelessness. For me, a lot of that with art is that reminder that we're all connected, that we're all in this together in some capacity. And that kind of comforting in the void of like, hey, here's some art, I'm here too. Hey, look, there's their art, they're here too. We're all here. Like
we're sharing the dream.
We're sharing the dream together. Where do you feel like creation fits in? Is creation timeless and spaceless? Like obviously this is no big deal, but how do you see creation fitting into
a button on the whole creation thing? I'm gonna try just for funsies.
Because creation, yeah, I'm curious I'm curious where you see
I,
this falling.
I will say this. I speak in a lot of metaphorical language, so I can only answer this with like kind of half of a fable, half of a BJ Novak style sketch. Um, I remember when I yeeted over the existential river. There's a river in all that is, I call it the existential river. On one side of it, everything fucking sucks. And on the other side of it, I don't really know. It's the closest. I have a spiritual teacher that calls it the playground timeline. I like that language, and so like I yeeted across it. It's absurd, that river. Don't fall in it. It's bad because it is the place kind of where time breaks. Like people are like, time is a timeline, and they're like, oh, time is a flat circle. Right now, not to get like oddly specific about it, but I read this book called The Rise and Fall of Dodo, and it convinced me, or compelling case, that time is a weird gelatinous cube. And it's just there. It's not a line. It's not like scenes in a movie. It's a weird blob, and it's amorphous. It can kind of change. It's got shape, and it can expand. It can contract. It can do this stuff, but it is all connected. And if you hit a part of it hard enough, unlike Jello, it'll bounce or it'll shear. It never breaks apart. And so everyone that is freaking out about destroying the end of the universe and stuff like this, there's no end to it. It's a weird blob. And any part of it that got destroyed, you wouldn't even remember it having existed. So what's there to be freaked out about? But to say that to someone on the wrong side of the existential river is to like be Charlie Brown's parents at best, and to be just like a psychotic, upsetting person. Because the meaning that you get on the other side of the playground timeline is the same meaning that you got as a kid on an actual playground. A bunch of made up nonsense. A bunch of just like, what are we doing today? Monkey bars. What's that all about? It's fun. Stop talking to me. What do you guys do today? Foursquare. Why? Because I want to defeat Jesse. Why? Because he's my enemy. Why? Because that's what we're doing today. Leave me alone. Like, that's not the game anymore. It feels like somehow the closer we get to the existential river, the more we want things to mean stuff, and we want someone to give us the answers. And when you cross that river, you're like, there's a whole lot of nothing except for a bunch of stuff that we made when we forgot that we were God. And so like that's kind of funny or fun or stuff to play around with. And I enjoy finding.
You're saying in this metaphor, that's what's in the river, is all that forgetting, or all of the like things related to ego or structures, or like
Peach's void is really the river. Like the other side is it's whatever people make when they play. It's whatever. So it's like, I think Soul kind of gets it at the Pixar movie Soul, where it's like, oh, when people are like in their shit on the planet, they actually yeet to the timeless realm and are just like in it. But it's different for every person, so you can't tell what someone's post existential river timeline playground zone is going to be like. The only time you even know anyone's there is when you're playing and you see someone else there and like, you're here. It's great. It's amazing. And when you think about it, what's happening, why it matters, is the exact moment that you've yeeted yourself back across the river. The thing that will take you out of that moment is the need to like control and grasp it and understand it and have power over it. I'm like, this is not, in my experience, again, maybe there's more rivers I don't fucking know about, but it doesn't seem to be how it works. It does, for whatever reason, that artfulness, that playfulness, that creativity space, like when you're in it, you're across the river, and when you're not, you're in problem-solving survival mode. And it does feel like that's where art splits, like across the existentialism. That's why I asked the question about the art and technology versus the cave painting. Were they trying to like not get eaten by tigers, or was Grog just messing around? We don't know, but we do know that like they each could be true, because that's how we've interfaced with art. And so at the end of the day, I had a time travel machine to go to Grog and be like, Grog, you vibing, or Grog, you surviving? And Grog would go, Grog, Grog, Grog. I'm like, ah, shit, okay. You don't even have language. Shit, this is awful. We were doing art before we could even talk about it.
And I bet there's a Grog that, I would guess, I feel that you could have the same end result. You could have the same art on the wall that came from both of those two different motivations. And to an outsider, however many years later looking at it, they look like the same. Oh, here's this Grog and there's Quag, and they both made a like, they
I will
both
die
made...
for Grog and Quag. Grog and Quag for president.
Who's Vice? Which is who's who in there, you know? And what party are they in?
think it's gonna be sort of a Roman triumvirate kind of deal, like the military leader, the financial leader, and then like the sort of CEO of sort of proto Rome.
You know, it could work better without language. It might be worth an experiment at this point. I don't see it harming, frankly.
I don't see if we can make it that much worse than the worst we've ever made it. But then again, we create more interesting games as things go on. We might, that sounds like hold my beer. Let's really mess this shit up.
Right. And that, as soon as you said that, that sounded to me again like the, not the spitefulness exactly, the like making life a bit kind of a thing of like, what would happen if this, or what about this, or
yep. The
that same thing
to being on this planet that I like. It is not fully cynical, but it is not fully hopeful. But I find myself saying it and then laughing. This neutral thought that I can think of, and it's this just sort of shrug, like this might as well be happening. It's just like, yeah, I just keep coming back to that. Like, why not? Everything else has happened. Why not this thing?
Ooh, that's an interesting different from saying like this is what's happening, to be like this might as well be happening. I was just thinking of that too in the last 2 days, of that same overlap of very sciencey and very artsy spiritual brain, of how logical a lot of the woo-woo quote things feel to me, of you know, being in the moment where you are, what is being created, that you are where you are. So you're going to say that things are supposed to be different from how they are in tangible reality right now,
Right.
like fighting against what is presently created.
There's a line, it made me very angry because I used to be an idealist. I don't identify as that anymore. Play one on TV, but it's not really my jam. Idealism is an insult to reality. And at first I was like, no, I don't want to insult reality. Okay, I'm going to be more present. And then as I kind of got more rascally and more like humorous, and I was like, oh, idealism is a dunk on reality, game back on. And now pettiness has taken over being an idealist, helping people. Like my most helpful self is a son of a bitch. And it's amazing. It's the funniest things that ever happened to me. The most caring, tender self wasn't good at it. And so the one who was good at it is there, but he's come with a sword, not a peace bridge.
And also maybe that most caring self needed a different outlet or a different way. Like, again, I do come back to that intention being layered within the petty of, well, I'm going to make a game called Mastering Allyship because fuck you for checking in on me, but it wasn't even checking in on me, you were checking in on you. And like, there is still a caring of that to me, in that with the part of game and playing that is active participation, there was still a part of you in that was asking those friends to participate and asking them to play a different game or to look at things differently. To me, there's a really big difference of anger that shuts down and shuts someone out, where you're like, I cannot engage, I won't play, I won't participate, versus the anger that's saying, hey, I really care about you and I care to continue this relationship and to continue being friends with you. And that is a soft, vulnerable part of, I have this need in order for that to happen, that there's something that I need you to play this game with me. I need you to see this in this perspective. That's where to me, it's like, to me, petty, well, I guess that's a little different from petty. There's like flavors of petty, or like type 1 and type 2 petty, like fun.
Oh, damn. You dare use my spells against me, Potter?
There's like a petty that's like true vengeful assholery, where you're disengaging with someone. And there's a petty that is, to me, like a playful, sort of like with how a lot of times in stand-up comedy, you can be petty or you can be an asshole or bitchy or whatever, and that actually can make people feel more comfortable and more invited in to participate in conversations that maybe they wouldn't participate.
My pettiness is my most relatable part. Everyone's like, oh, we can be petty now. I'm like, yeah, always could. Like, that's the deal.
It's always been an option.
I can give you the flavor of it, and it is like weird, like shadow dad masculine energy. And I am leaving it here. Then you guys will get to get my goddamn free therapy. It's fine. It's the you gonna learn today energy. It's the like, oh, we're doing this. You're gonna learn today, and you're gonna play a grown man's game. You're gonna learn a grown man's lesson. That like those two lines epitomize my petty self where it's like, word, we're doing this. Yes, I wish somebody would. Let's go. And again, like you said, it is that I will be engaging more feeling versus the like, oh, we're done with this. And so like I've never had that language around like, you're right. Like it is a close, it is coming with fist bears, but it is a closeness seeking anger versus like a cold, disconnected, dismissive anger. It's like it's like putting in my mouth guard. Let's go. It's going down.
Let's create a tumble together. Let's tussle this out, because at the very least we'll both have learned something or processed through something, or we will have created an art of a play fight.
Yes, the generative conflict. That's if you're gonna fight, let's make them art out of it, you know.
And or a program, and or a very helpful teaching or class or something that, or and art that will go into those humans' future art. Now I'm getting into my serious mode here where I'm like, this is important and relevant. Damn it, don't shit on yourself.
It's both. It's a hideous prank and an opportunity for self-transformation. They're kind of the same.
Like the prank of is existence a prank? Can we close it out there?
Like a goddamn existence.
Did you
like, don't wrap me into your weird ontology, God that forgot they were God. Like, why do I gotta exist? Because you got bored being all that is. What the hell is that all about?
I want to see this as a whole bit. Did you ever play the game that you lose when you remember you're playing the game, which to whoever listening, you just lost the game? And Wendell, I'm sorry, and I'm not sorry. I'm sorry that I'm not sorry.
I gotta fix my friend Matt Heck. We've been playing this game since middle school. We're grown-ass men, and I'll still get a text every so often. I was like, motherfucker, that game has never stopped. That game has been going on between me and this guy. Like, we are like homies. I'm like, I guess I'm not going to his wedding, but like,
you lost the game, Matt.
Is hinged upon that game. And so there's a part of me that's just like, I hate this. And also there's a very tender part of me that's just like, yes, of course I played the game. It's my friend Matt. Oh my God. Yikes.
Oh, which goes again to the game as a way to connect, which the overarching C of the humanity and the creation is a way to connect with all of these too. That
obstacle is disconnection.
Ooh. Ooh. Say more on that. And so then
no, not even a little bit.
No.
The unnecessary obstacle of the game of life is disconnection. That's a cool explaining that. I'm not going to profane that bar with explanation.
No, I needed to hear it again. I needed you to repeat it.
One more time, I will say it again. But I'm going to do it as a bit now. The unnecessary obstacle of the game of life is disconnection.
Amen. And how hilarious that unnecessary obstacle is also how I've learned the most about connection.
Again, it's a prank. We got here because it's a prank. It's a bit that got away. Let the church say amen.
Amen. I'll play the church in this bit. It's a good Jewish thing. It works really well.
Okay, that's all I got.
Thank you so much for coming on and recording. This was so fun, and so many. I feel like I'll be like processing something else to like randomly pop into my head about this, and it was very fun to have it be an actual playful podcast where we could be serious nerds and also, yeah, dance and goof around.
Did my damn job then. That's good. That's why I like bringing that vibe.
I appreciate you bringing the vibe, and I will put all of the links in the description for wherever people are listening or on YouTube, so they can find you if they want to bring in a spiteful prank turned wonderful program or whatever it is. Maybe, maybe someone out there needs a dungeon master, I'm guessing. Teachings of dungeon masters. I'm just, my head is off to the races of
yes.
playful creation.
Yeah, if you want to like up-level your imagination, learn how to do world building, get better at just like tapping into your spirit of play to help yourself or the world, holla at your boy.
Holler. That's me. I'm hollering. I'm already excited to record a second podcast with you. It's gonna be so fun.
Leave them wanting more.
It's true. And thank you again for playing through Buckwheat in a Cone and the distractions of it. I really appreciate all of it.
For the game. That was the unnecessary obstacle. It's like Buckwheat's a character. I got to do a whole Victorian orphan bit. Mama, why do you scream into the box again? Are you well? Have you taken your lithium?
And on that note, thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. Please message us about all of these things. I'd love to read your thoughts on play and art and creativity and what you create from this podcast we just created. I really appreciate you creating this with me. This was so fun.
Spay and neuter your pets.
Spay and neuter your pets is true. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for being you.